never guess who I had in the back of the cab last week? No, who? Some YouTuber, reckoned he was famous. Furious something. Ever heard of him? No, I reckon he's rubbish. You join me today at the wheel of a particularly specific car with a very definite purpose in life, and one that's designed, well, for the modern world, really. I'm driving the brand new LEVC TX electric range extender taxi cab. Proud to be sponsored by Diamond Bright, the car care products that have been keeping the furious fleet looking their best for a long time already. To find all you need to keep your car clean and protected, follow the link below to diamondbright.co.uk. If your idea of a London taxi is a clattering old black thing belching smoke and rattling with a nice Isuzu diesel from the 1980s in it, think again, the future is here, and it is very, very nice indeed, actually. New emissions regulations all around the world, and particularly in city centres, means that petrol and diesel internal combustion engine taxis are no longer a viable thing. And that means electric taxis have had to step up in the form of this, the LEVC TX electric taxi. Now, chances are you've sat in the back of plenty of taxis, but have you ever wondered what it's like to be in the front of one? And if you're a taxi driver looking to step up from an old internal combustion car to a new electric one, here's what it's like. Now, looking around the TX, you can see it was designed for a very specific purpose, to be a taxi, and the perfect taxi form. Big area in the back, lots of room for people, but also comfortable for the driver as well, and easily recognisable, certainly in Britain, as a traditional taxi. Put this in black, in the distance, you squint, you can recognise it as a taxi just from the silhouette. In this colour, Bristol blue, it looks fantastic because as a piece of design, and in the car in its own right, it's actually quite an attractive car. No, not quite, very attractive car. This is a good looking machine. Certainly there is an argument that a black cab should be black, but there's a dozen or so colours to choose from in solids, metallics and pearlescence, ranging from free, like black and this shade of Bristol blue, through to pearlescence for £500 extra on top of the standard price of the car. Other trim details you'll notice are these rather elegant and very, very solid chrome door handles. Really big, blocky, great things to sort of grasp and hold, and there's nice trim detailing down the bottom of the car as well. But the whole thing is aimed squarely at practicality. It's a big vehicle, 2 metres wide, nearly 5 metres long and 2 metres tall as well, but it's slab sided. There is nice detail put in these panels, but nothing extends too far out, and certainly nothing goes beyond these mirrors, which are tall but not too wide, so you can get through gaps. And these wheels, 17 inches but not alloys, no, proper steel wheels with beauty rings, so they can take a bashing. Obviously, living in town, you're not going to try and hit a curb, but occasionally it will happen over the course of a car's life, and these beauty rings are far cheaper to replace than a set of delicate alloys. And these tall 65 profile tyres are handy for bashing through potholes, of which there are plenty, going over speed humps, of which there are even more, and if you have to go up a curb, it's not going to risk damaging the wheel. Now, here at the front we do still have a very traditional looking taxi front, so passengers or potential passengers on the pavement can still see this thing coming down the street in the distance and make it out for a taxi, even at a long way off. Quite elegant, this big grille looks quite good. Why has an electric car got a radiator? Well, it's a range extender, we'll look at that in a second. As well as these round LED running light ringed headlamps behind these sculpted front covers, we have a pair of charging options. In fact, there are 3 charging options on this car. Behind these 2 panels are multiple charging plugs, so whatever kind of charge point you turn up at, you can find the right kind of wire to connect you in and get some juice. There's also a 3rd panel down the side in the traditional point, which is the petrol one, because under the bonnet is the range extender. Let's have a look at that. Now, here under the bonnet we have got 2 propulsion systems, well, 1 really, but let's get on to that. Obviously this is an electric vehicle. There is an electric motor driving the rear wheels, which produces 110 kilowatts and 240 newton meters of torque. It's got a maximum spin rate of 11,500 RPM, which I'm going to call fast. Now, that provides all the drive for the car. It's a 31 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery, somewhere in the frame of the car. Now, in general use that will give you 63.4 miles of range and around the city 77.7, but obviously regenerative braking and distance driving will have adverse and positive effects on the battery, so that's really hard to pin down despite what WLTP are trying to do. However, range anxiety is not a thing in this car because it also has this petrol powered 1477cc 3-cylinder double overhead cam turbocharged 12 valve petrol engine running not the wheels but a generator. This generates electricity feeding the battery and recharging the car as you drive. It's a 60 kilowatt generator. Effectively, it's an onboard 60 kilowatt generator producing electricity, and combined you get an overall range of over 300 miles and MPG in around 313. However, if you're just doing town driving, you might not use any petrol at all ever. And the frame this all sits in is pretty advanced as well. That's actually a bonded aluminium structure with external composite panels. I actually really rather like the rear profile of the car as well. Nice sort of rounded shapes of the sculpture of it. The huge full width window looks really in proportion. The high level brake light is really, really high, truck level high in fact. The chrome trim adds a nice bit of detail to it. The name and the badging also works out well. There's a reversing camera option, fuel cut-off option because it's a commercial vehicle. Interestingly, the Hackney carriage plinth is an option on the lowest trim level car. And there's a flat plinth area here, so if you don't go for this plastic plinth here, you still can put a tag, a license tag down here as well. With the chrome trim, name detailing, and these chrome outline tall tail lights that are standing up like pillars, which do put me in mind a little bit of a Rolls-Royce Phantom rear end. In fact, the whole back end of the car looks a little bit Rolls-Royce SUV-ish. It does have a bit of a commanding, stylish presence on the road. And one thing back here we need to talk about is this is not, as you might expect, a boot or trunk. This is merely like a service storage area. So we've got the spare wheel, the 12-volt battery. There's somewhere you can put your charging cables, and of course your jack and emergency fuses. This is really a utility area rather than an on-the-road storage place. That's somewhere else. Now, if you are considering buying a TX, there's a better than average chance. The reason is you're a taxi driver, and this seat will be your office for the next few years, so it better be right. And you know what? They've done a pretty good job. You step up like you're getting into a commercial vehicle, a van or something, so you have an amazing high up command driving position, as they used to call it. So you've got great vision out, you've got a bit of a long view of your bonnet where the engine and things are, but that means there's plenty more room in the cabin. The materials are all very, very hard wearing. Solid, hard plastics aren't going to break, aren't going to wear out during the car's service life. And after a couple of 100,000 miles on the road, these plastics aren't going to be looking shiny, I don't think. This big touch screen, the digital dash, this electronic gear shifter look faintly reminiscent of certain recent Volvos, and probably not without good reason. However, it's all good stuff, so let's not criticise that because it's a good thing. Starting over on the very, very tall indeed door, we have got the top surface easily in reach. We've got electric mirror switches adjusting left and right. We've got 4 electric windows, so the front doors and the back doors are all on this little panel here, along with a lockout for the rear windows for those annoying passengers. Central locking and twin speakers, so mid-range and tweeter for decent audio here, because we have got great radio sound in this car. There's an easy to reach door handle, and the door pull is a little small on your fingers, but it's again not in a bad position. And there's a biggish pocket down the bottom, big enough for plenty of paperwork, slightly wider at the front so you can perhaps get a small bottle in there as well. Carrying on with the amenities and cubby holes aspect of the car, up above you do have a nice sort of van style cubby for paperwork and things, although this isn't standard on every model, this is an option on some models. There are little cubbies, nooks and crannies for odds and sods here, one for the key, little spot there, little flat area on top of the Speedo, and this armrest, which apparently this isn't standard on everything. There is a package which includes this, or you can spec it separately. This is a nice size for bits and pieces, and it has a pair of USBs, aux input for the stereo, and a standard 12-volt socket in there as well. Over on the left of this area, we do have this quite curious but quite handy sliding accessory bar, which is again an optional extra part of a different package, which has a little nice cubby hole which is big enough for phones, keys, odds and sods, and of course has a handy cup holder. This is a mobile T-shelf in fact, so it can slide back and forth. They also have T-shelf area here, so you can have sandwiches on the go just there, and a small sloping away from you T-shelf on the dashboard up there as well. It's not that tall, and also be cautious because there is an air vent blowing up on the windscreen, so you don't want to be dropping any cups of tea down there. Important safety tip. Headroom is impressive. The car is very tall, so people can sort of stand almost into the back of the thing, and so the headroom in the front is just vast. You can wear a top hat in here if you wanted to. You have a pair of LED lights. All the lights in this car are LED for low power drain, obviously. You can turn on the rear lighting from this panel up here as well, and there should be another panel up here which has been removed for some reason while I've been borrowing this car, which turns the taxi light on, and also for obviously doing the fare and that kind of thing. Now the display in front of the driver is purely digital. It's just a big LCD screen. It's keyless start as well, so just turn the start-stop dial and the screen appears out of the blackness. 3 dials. The main one in the centre is the speedo, going up to 100 miles an hour. Normally the top speed of this car is 80, but perhaps downhill with a tailwind you can get a fair bit more than that. The speedo dial also gives you information like your range, your distance covered, and a nice little pictogram of the car from above showing doors open, that kind of information. Also the parking brake indicator. On the left, this is also quite an important dial because this entire ring is your dual fuel gauge. The top half is your electric charge, the bottom is your petrol remaining, and that gives you estimated distance remaining to drive as well. The right hand one is maybe familiar to existing EV drivers, but maybe a bit alien to ICE internal combustion drivers, as this is a energy recovery, regeneration, propulsion twin set of dials, which tells you what the batteries and the motors are doing, whether they're producing power and consuming power, or whether they are regenerating power and feeding it back into the battery, because this has got multiple drive modes as well. You start off automatically in smart mode. The car decides whether to be using pure EV or kind of a hybrid system. It just works things out for itself. You can also move it into pure EV mode, or there's a mode where you can have the range extender running. Say for example, if you're driving on a dual carriageway or a motorway where you need the extra juice running, because that kind of driving will run the battery down very fast without any regen braking going on for long periods. And finally, this is the mode I kind of like the best actually. It's the 1 foot driving mode, like on a Nissan Leaf and various other electric cars. You drive on the accelerator only, and when you lift off the accelerator you effectively get engine braking, and that gives you maximum recovered energy, regenerating back into the batteries and recharging them to the maximum effect. Now moving back towards you, we've got a pair of stalks, obviously very traditional stuff, lights and indicators on the left, wipers on the right, quite nice little end stalk button for the rear wiper, which goes up and down for intermittent and permanently on. Auto lights are here, many exciting high-end kind of functionality things that are in this car. Most things you'd find on, say, a high-end executive luxury car are possible to have in this taxi as well. Steering wheel, as I said, very tough, hard plastic finish, but a nice size and a nice position. It's very vertical towards you. Covered in buttons, so cruise control on the left, audio visual telephone on the right, and the horn in the centre. Horn test quickly. Yep, people will know if you're outside waiting to pick up. And finally, in front of the driver, we've got a little panel of buttons hidden down here, opening the tailgate, opening the fuel fillers, and intercom button, so you can hear what the people in the back are saying, or if they're being annoying, turn them off. Now in the centre of the car, the console area, the designers have taken advantage of the all-digital aspect of the future, because there are virtually no buttons on here at all. The top half, everything, infotainment, navigation, your heating and ventilation, it's all on this touchscreen with only minimal number of buttons along the bottom, which are the most frequently used and the kind of the home button. Working from the top, we've got a sat nav, then we've got a media, it's got FM, DAB, will play Bluetooth and connected to your phone, so whatever kind of media you want to be exploring, you can stream pretty much anything to this. Obviously phone connection, and then car status, so any messages regarding the car will come up on this screen as well. And the one thing which is always there, regardless what other aspects you've chosen to use on the main screen area, is your heating and ventilation, the fan climate control, the heated seat, and the temperature. That's always there, and a little home button to always take you back easily back where you started. And finally in the centre we've virtually nothing else. The start-stop dial, twist to turn, with the electronic parking brake behind it, and you can have that set to automatic, so you can almost imagine that's not there if you don't want to use it. And of course the gear shifter, it's really nice, the satin metal, the piano black, and a nice kind of rubberized texture on the back of it. It's only got 3 positions because it's an electric drive car, so reverse, neutral, and drive for forwards, because it's, you know, EV, that's all you get. But it does have left and right sideways functionality, and this is how you go through your mode from smart to pure EV and everything else. Now over to the left, you may have noticed there is no passenger seat down there, because taxi cab obviously, so it's just a large hard plastic floored area, ideal for luggage, suitcases, whatever people want to chuck in the car and have them carry if they won't fit in the back with them, or your own just sandwiches and stuff. There's no glove box, just a solid plastic area, and in the back of this we have a little speaker for listening to the intercom, a coat hook, and a USB on top, which is an option for powering the Wi-Fi, and finally a nice little elasticated thing for putting bits of paper and stuff. Passenger door, interestingly, is a mirror of the driver's door almost, but without the door handle. It's got a hook for this luggage strap. Imagine on left-hand drive cars they'll switch that over. Right, let's look in the back. Now the rear passenger area of the TX is commodious, I'm gonna say. It's absolutely vast, 3 seats wide, big enough for adults on the back, and also in the front rear facing. These rear doors are suicide rear hinged, and they open 90 degrees. And on the pavement side you can optionally spec a ramp, so you can drive wheelchairs in here and be wheelchair accessible. And to that end, these rear facing 3 seats are staggered, so there's more space by the door and less space on the roadside door behind the driver, so there's more room for the driver, slightly less legroom in front of this one, but enough room regardless, about 45 centimetres, 75 centimetres across and staggered. Every seat has got a 3-point belt, every seat has a headrest. There are blowers for the heating and ventilation blowing above and below from the bulkhead, and of course you can have this perspex driver safety screen in between the passengers and yourself in the front. Interestingly, on the lowest level car, the icon, that's not as standard, but also the icon doesn't get the taxi lamp or the Hackney plinth on the back either, so I wonder if perhaps that's for a slightly different market. Carrying on with the amenities back here, you've got a lovely, spacious, airy feeling passenger compartment. Full panoramic roof is an option, but makes the thing feel fantastically light. Big grab handles all over the place, so you can, I don't know, do kind of aerobics and gymnastics on your brake. The floor area is vast. I mean, there's lots of room for activities in here. Yay! Bah! These seats are, of course, a wipe clean vinyl, so if anything untoward does happen in the back, it shouldn't take too much effort to clean it up. And of course, the hard wearing floor is also going to be easy to kind of rub down and clean if you have to. There are 6 LED courtesy lights in the back, one either side above the door, and 2 pairs above the back bench seat. There's also USB sockets on both sides by the doors, and a mains 240 volt 3-pin outlet down there as well. So if your passengers need to be using the laptops, charging the phones, whatever else they want to be doing, you can keep them happy. Happy customer is a tipping customer. There's also Wi-Fi availability as an option in this car. Now you're going to be wondering what all this costs, and no, it's not as cheap as a second-hand Ford Focus. The starting point for the lowest spec icon is £56,000, and the highest, most well-spec'd as standard car is the Vista Comfort Plus pack, which is just over 60 grand on the road. However, there are lots and lots of options on this car. As with all manufacturers these days, there are option packs, so you can more economically group options together that are commonly chosen together, or you can go off menu, go a la carte and make the thing entirely your own. I'm going to need to get better paper right now because the options list on this car is just ridiculous. Starting with some of the main packs, we've got the chrome grille surround, lower extension trim, chrome door handles, chrome wheel centre packs. That's part of the exterior chrome pack, obviously. The driver convenience pack includes the central armrest, the accessory bar, 12 volt socket in the driver compartment, rear parking sensors, passenger comfort in the back, the glass roof, independent touch controls for temperature and fan speed, which are on the passenger side door just there, 2 USB charge points, dedicated USB socket for onboard Wi-Fi, which I think is that one over there, high visibility grab handles overhead, and row 3 LED reading lights back here. And of course there's the wheelchair accessibility package. So listing through some of the other spec on this car, which is just too many things to remember. Automatic wipers, heated electric door mirrors, heated rear window obviously, heated front windscreen obviously because there's no engine producing heat, so you need to run a motor, fan and a heating element, which is not very efficient, so it's more efficient to just have a heated electric windscreen. And that heated windscreen is standard on the Vista Comfort and the Comfort Plus, but an option on the Icon and the basic Vista, but definitely worth having because it will extend your range on a cold day. Self-leveling LED headlights with main beam assist are standard, as are the LED running lights. Then we get the driver aids. We've got cruise control with a speed limiter, rear parking sensors, front parking sensors, reversing camera, hill start assist, electronic parking brake. As well as those other cubbies I mentioned earlier, we've got a lockable under driver's seat storage locker, useful. We've got dual zone air conditioning for the front and back of the car. We've got multi-way electric driver's adjustment, including the little thing that slides out under your knees. And that seat is fantastically comfortable. There is, as you can see, a lot. And the more I sit in this car, the more I think, this is such a big practical car. Not only do kids love the look of it and being up high and looking out of it, you do kind of look down into Range Rover Evoques in this thing, but there's so much space to stretch out. More than one person has looked at this car and said, wouldn't that make a great camper conversion? And you know what, they're not wrong. This will make an awesome camper conversion. Some curtains or black out these windows, got the panoramic roof for light, it'd be really nice. Or take out the panoramic roof, put up a pop top roof. I know this is not where the review is meant to be going, but this would be a fantastic camper. This could be, forget SUVs, buy yourself a taxi. Brilliant, why did no one else think of this? Now starting the taxi is very easy. Turn the big start knob to the right, pull the gear lever backwards to drive, push the park brake, which can be set to automatic, and move off in total silence. Now 0 to 60 is only about 13 seconds. The initial pickup is just instant and it's eerily silent. Being such a big vehicle, it is a little bit echoey, a bit like being in a van, but not quite so hollow sounding because there is a lot more trim and fixtures inside here than you would find in your regular everyday van. The instruments are astonishingly clear. They're nice and bright, they work well at night as well because they're all backlit LCD. And they've got some clever features. For example, in the centre of the speedo, you've actually got a little indicator saying what the speed limit is. It comes up saying I'm currently in a 40 limit. A little orange dot also on the outer ring of the speed dial saying what speed you should be doing, and if you start to stray over that at all, it does start flashing just to give you a little warning that you are straying over a couple of miles per hour. That starts like 2 mph above. Obviously, being electric, there's only the automatic style option, drive, reverse, neutral. The ride is fairly smooth. It's not too jittery and bumpy. It's sprung fairly hard because the weight of 6 people in the back is going to be noticeable. But it's not jittery and bumpy like you might expect it to be. They've damped it pretty well. The brakes are pretty powerful even without the one pedal system. Well, I have noticed a couple of times coming to a halt when it's been a little bit slippery because it has rained like crazy these last few days. The ABS does seem to cut in a bit harshly sometimes, and you get a bit of an unwanted judder, I would say, as you come to a final halt. That aside, it's all a very, very seamless driving experience. The power steering is not too heavy, and visibility is generally pretty good because you've got massive windows all round. When you come to do a backup manoeuvre, this big screen does become a reversing camera, so you can see exactly what's going on behind you. And this big tall greenhouse of a car means you feel really open and unencumbered. Now this thing really does come into its own on stop-start traffic because that's where the regen braking works and what it's kind of designed for, really. Because it is nice and quiet and smooth on the open road. It's a nice car to be in. It's not massively quick. The top speed's about 80 miles an hour. Once you get onto these small back roads, then you find out what it's really like in the working environment. Now obviously, with the much fabled and well-known taxi turning circle, manoeuvrability is astonishing. You can basically do a complete loop-the-loop in an open entrance of a road. I'll find one that's quiet enough to do that in a moment, just to demonstrate. The only real bugbear with it I have is this A-post is so big that occasionally things coming from the right-hand side can be kind of lost behind that point. Now when you're driving full electric, this has got a range of about 63.8 miles, estimated on WLTP figures, which is the new system they measure these things by. When you move into the city, which is where it's likely to be spending a lot more of its time, they estimate this goes up to around 77 miles, which, okay, isn't massive, but if you're doing a lot of city driving, a lot of stop-start, that's likely to actually increase even more. Now, unfortunately, most of the driving I've done the last few days has tended to have been more kind of open road, B road, and that has sapped the battery pretty quickly. I've not been getting the estimated mileage, unfortunately, but that's not the kind of driving I would expect to be doing. And I don't have a battery charger at home, so in order to go out, I've had to pop down to the local supermarket and plug in, invent reasons to go and buy things for a few minutes to go and recharge. If I was running one of these cars daily, I would absolutely get a fast charger installed at home, but that would save me so much time and so much money. Drivers who have already adopted these are reporting astonishing savings. I was actually talking to a taxi driver who came to have a look at the car whilst I was filming the statics, and he was mightily impressed with this thing. And said a friend of his actually had one of these already, and I forget what he particularly was saying, but it was a ridiculous amount of savings. But they're reporting about 150 to 200 a week for a busy working cab driver, saving over the cost of a traditional internal combustion engine. I have no idea where this goes. Oh, it's a dead end. Maybe this is an opportunity to demonstrate the incredible turning circle. Yeah, I wasn't sure we were going to make that, but we did. The official range is 313 miles combined, petrol and electric, and the WLTP figures suggest an overall MPG of 301 if you're using a combination of electric and petrol. This car is really interesting to drive, but the reaction you get is just you're invisible on the road because taxis are such a piece of street furniture effectively that everyone is used to. Someone sees a taxi, they don't even blink an eye. If you were working undercover as a private detective or something, this would be fantastic. Actually, speaking of alternative uses, I've taken a lot of fun cars home over the years with my job, and often take my son out for a ride in them because, you know, he's interested a bit. But this, never mind anything super fast, super car, V6, V8, powerful, fast, exciting, this is what he was most impressed with. This is the car he's asked to go out in again and again. Every time we've had to go to Sainsbury's, Dad, can I go in the taxi? Which is incredible. The kids just love it. They love sitting in those reverse facing seats apparently, but all kids do. I know he does. This does feel remarkably rapid off the line. It really shouldn't do, but it does. Now, the thing I have found driving this taxi is that because you've got the battery readout in terms of both like a bar graph and a range in terms of miles remaining, it really does encourage you to drive in the most smooth and power conscientious way that you possibly can. So lifting off before corners, only gradually dabbing the throttle out of it, trying to conserve momentum but not go too rapidly. Obviously, because you've got people in the back that don't want to be thrown around. Just trying to eke the most out of the batteries to extend your range and your, like I say free, but certainly your dirt cheap electric power as long as you can. And so you often do have an eye on that regeneration propulsion needle swinging right for when you're using power, left when it's being generated again for you. And also the energy recovery dial below it, you often have an eye on that one too, just to sort of keep an eye on things. So that's not how you save energy. There's a little bit of wind noise from the A-post and the mirrors at around 50 miles an hour. But that's to be expected on something as sort of big and tall as this. And the car does lean quite a lot into a corner. Being sort of composite and aluminium, an awful lot of the weight is down sort of below or at wheel level, I would say. Because the upper structure doesn't really weigh very much, apart from the glass up at this level and the panoramic roof. It doesn't really weigh a lot, so I'm surprised how much it does roll, to be honest. I was expecting a little bit less than that. But it is very tall though. With those big sidewall tyres and the sort of fairly long soft travel suspension, it does, oh, I was going to say it's a Triumph Acclaim, but it's not, it's a Honda Ballard. Wow, that's cool. Sorry, I was saying, yes, with its long travel suspension, those big sidewalled tall profile tyres, it does make easy work of bad roads, speed bumps, lumps in the road, potholes and that kind of thing. So you can sort of bump and clump over them without too much real notice in the car, to be honest. You know, I can do the massive turn in the road thing again. I love doing that. That's just the real party piece of this car. Here we are in a wide high street. There we go, round in one. That is just so much fun. Now the last little bit of this drive, I've been on 2 miles for actually quite a long time, but because I've done a few starts and stops and roundabouts the last couple of minutes, that last mile has actually eked out quite a long way. And normally if I was driving an electric car, I would be getting quite nervous at this point because 2 miles of range and I think I'm at least 2 miles from a charging station right now, but I know I don't have to worry because I've been here before with this car, and I know that when I get to 0, I'll hear the motor kick in and all will be well. Now I'm very glad this particular car has got this armrest spec'd in it. That does make driving it a lot more comfortable. I am surprised though that the cup holder on this rail isn't a standard item. I'd have thought everyone in the world driving one of these would want as many cup holders and cubby holes as possible, so that would be completely standard. Or maybe there's some reason that you wouldn't want it there, because maybe there's something you could put in there if you're, I don't know, carrying wheelchairs or something a lot and they got in the way, but then you'd still probably want a cup holder and a cubby hole somewhere else. So yeah, I'm surprised there aren't more cup holders around the place. And this big LCD screen is relatively easy to use once you've got it figured out. I have to admit, I'm not a massive fan of big LCD screens for the most part, because they can be a little bit distracting, to be perfectly honest, if you don't necessarily know your way around them. But your fan speed, so your auto climate control, you can choose the fan speed or automatic, is permanently there. Your heated seats are permanently there, so you can always choose that with a single tap of the finger, because they actually do tell you in the handbook, and this is something I've come across a few times with electric cars, is that you're better off just using the heated seat and warming up your own body rather than trying to fill the entire cabin with warm air, because that's a lot of space to fill, and it takes an awful lot more energy than just heating this one small area, and especially if no one's in the back of the cab. And finally, the other one that's always there is the temperature control. Just tap the number, use the slider or use the up-down arrows, and that's just there waiting for you at any given time. And also, the physical buttons they've included are the play, pause, volume, forward, backward for the audio, and also the three, I don't know, most important ones perhaps, hazard warning lights just in case, and your front and rear heated screens. Let's do more driving through a housing estate, because that's slightly more realistic for what this car might be doing an awful lot more of. Wow, this weather has really turned bad. Now, if you're wondering why I'm still wearing sunglasses and it's pitch dark and raining, it's because these are actually optical sunglasses, and it was lovely and sunny when I left the house. I didn't bring my regular glasses with me, so that's why. Now, pulling up to junctions, this car does still have the traditional taxi shape, so the bonnet is a tiny bit long, but not so much you struggle to get out, because the overhangs aren't horrific, and you can kind of see where the bonnet ends quite clearly. Well, I hope you can hear me okay still over the sound of the rain, which is now battering the windscreen. It's got quite nasty all of a sudden, really. But yeah, positioning this thing on the road is really easy, because although it's a very big vehicle, you can actually see the corners quite clearly, and it's very slab-sided as well, so you know how wide you are. You know that down below where you're looking at the passenger side, there's nothing sticking out beyond what you can see in the mirror and what you can see from the bottom of the window. It's all, what you see is what you get, which makes manoeuvring through tight spaces an awful lot easier. I am aware at this point that when you watch the GoPro clips that are going over the top of this, they will show a lovely sunny day. That's because I did all the GoProing earlier on when I wasn't talking to the camera and the weather was beautiful. This wasn't forecast. I don't know if you can hear it or not in the background, but just kind of whisper quiet and actually kind of less audible than the sound of the rain on the windscreen and the tyres on the road. The range extender engine has now kicked in, and you can hear it. It sounds a bit like rushing water, like a small ornamental waterfall with a pump driving it. But that's the petrol motor just running quietly in the background, and that's now generating 60 kilowatts of electricity, which is enough to recharge the batteries or go direct to the motors and keep this thing rolling for another 200 and something miles. Yeah, below 30 miles an hour I can hear the petrol engine, but as soon as you get over 30, the other road noises do drown it out. And that short charge and that little braking exercise, just stopping at the traffic lights, did give us enough power to set off again just purely electrically then. I don't think the motor's kicked back in yet. This is a really relaxing vehicle to drive. If I had to be in a car for 8 or 9 or 10 hours in the day, which to be honest I sometimes do, plus doing my regular work, but if I was just driving this car round and round town, this would actually be a really comfortable, relaxing thing to do it in. And I've put a fair few miles on this over the last few days, and it's just always a relaxing, easy thing to drive. It's no stress, it's no drama. It's just nice. And it shouldn't cause you stress and drama in long-term use either. And it's got, as standard, a 3-year, 120,000 mile warranty, which you can extend to a 5-year, 150,000 mile warranty if you want to. And it'll help keep you on the road as well. with a 25,000 mile service interval, so you don't have to be taking it off the road for scheduled maintenance very often at all. So this is amazing. We'd had 0 miles of range. It's not actually picked up to a full mile again yet, but just driving through town a little bit has now regenerated enough power in the battery that the motor isn't on anymore. Just the hum of the fan blower for the windscreen and the rain on the roof. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this ride out in what for me is something a little bit out of the ordinary, and for most people I imagine it is as well. Obviously if you're a taxi driver, this is pretty much mainstay of your everyday life. If you're driving an older internal combustion taxi, maybe this is quite interesting. I hope it was. If you've enjoyed this, as always, please hit like, subscribe, the bell notification, all those other gubbins that makes YouTube go round, and join me again next time when I'm driving something which I guarantee will be completely different. Now I better get going because I'm not going south of the river this time of night. See you next time.